Okay. Well, thanks everyone for being here. Micah and I have actually been really excited for this meeting. We're really excited for this next year. And tonight we're going to start with just sharing a little bit about our story and what's brought Micah and me together and Vitalist School, how it's come about. And then we have a actual PowerPoint presentation, which is quite not like Micah and my style. There's not a lot of PowerPoint in Vitalist School, but for those of you who like kind of the details and some of the understanding framework, we'll share that. And then towards the end of the PowerPoint, we'll give some testimonials and give a little bit more of that like embodied felt sense. We have a couple people in Vitalist School, so maybe we hear from them. So you can get the heart of it as well. So that's our objective tonight. Micah, you want to say hi? I've been chatting.
Sure. Yeah. My name is Micah McLaughlin, and I have been in the health and wellness world for a long time. I started out my training as a naturopathic practitioner. So I was working with supplementation and then moved over to Western herbalism. But pretty quickly into my practice, realized that the root of suffering is these beliefs that we've carried along. The root of suffering is the conditioning that we've received from our families, from the religious institutions, from the schools that we've gone to, from the epigenetics. And so it really has taken me on a pretty wild ride in the last 15 years and have just continued to move more and more towards the practices and the maps and the understanding that create the most transformation and change. And so Lee and I have been working in some capacity together for over a decade, and this will be the 7th year of the school. And the school was really just a reflection of we want to pass these things along. We believe in a world where there can be less suffering and there can be more integration and more healing and more togetherness and more community. And this work is really, I'm blown away every year by the quality of humans that show up in this cohort, the depth in which we all go together, the places of healing and transformation that people sort of unlock within themselves. It's just incredibly inspiring. And so there's nothing else I would rather be doing than this work. And I am also, holding space with one-on-one. I'm doing a lot of work with men. Currently, I'm in a process of bringing boys initiation work to West Michigan. So initiating the 13 to 16-year-old boys, moving from childhood to adolescence. And so I got a lot of other irons in the fire. And yet every year when I sort of reflect on the school and this cohort, just the nature of this container is, I think it's one of the most transformational offerings that we have here at the Institute, and we have a lot of fun. It's a really, really joyful experience to walk alongside of everybody, and it's fun to have all of you alumni here on this call. I guess that it speaks well to the program, right? If it wasn't so good, nobody would show up in this call right now. Didn't want to do a second year, so I'm really just in a spot in life right now where I'm deeply, deeply enjoying this work and feel like it's such an honor, so much meaning to be able to show up and hold space for all of us and to join together as in song and dance and healing as a community. So grateful to be here.
Yeah, thanks, Micah. One of the sacred things about Vitalist School, because Micah does this beautiful men's work in the world, and I do so much women's work. I've been doing and holding women's circles and leading women in leadership for 15 years. And so much of the work I do outside of the school is women's work. And Vitalist School gets to be a container where we are co-ed. And there's so much healing in that. And it's a really sacred space to witness what happens when we bring conscious men and conscious women together and the healing that's created for one another. And so really special. And, Micah has always had such a beautiful gift for seeing so clear and being able to see with such depth, and it's been such an honor to work with him. We've, like he said, have been working together for more than a decade and have just had such similar mindsets. I think that we have this karmic connection with one another. We create magic when we're together, and we've just been really blessed. And I've been so blessed by Micah and all he's brought to me. And this, my story is working a lot with women, a lot with coaching, a lot in the healing, emotional, somatic work. I got trained in somatic body work, and it was all emotional healing work when I was 21. And so have just been doing this type of work for so long. And my path that's led me to this type of work is that I did all of the things. I did all of the personal development things. I did all of the therapy, and I healed so much of my life. I really struggled with a lot of mental health stuff and trauma and challenges when I was younger. And then I got to a point where none of that stuff was working anymore. And I had already had a really successful business in this industry and was doing well. And I was not okay. I was having like my own sort of end of my road breakdown. And what I didn't realize was how much of the work I hadn't done was the trauma work and working with the non-ordinary state, somatic stuff that we now teach. And simultaneously, what was happening was I was doing all of this empowerment work with these women and really helping women find like their fullest expression in the world. And I had this program developed that was quite good because it really helped us tap into like this true essence of ourselves. And what was happening in order for people to step into that is all their trauma would come up. And I kept trying to be like, I don't do trauma work. That's where I draw the line. I refer out for this. And the combination of me hitting my own like dark night of the soul and what was happening with my clients, it's threw me into this type of work. And I now have just dedicated my whole life to it. I love it so much. And so here we are. Like Micah said, we've just really fallen in love with what actually breeds transformation. And we have scoured and we have trained. We've gone all over the world doing trainings and bringing them back and keeping what feels the most effective. And it's just been an honor to do this with you, Micah. So good. This program is 9 months. It is a life-changing transformational program built for as a school, but we focus so much on that inner work as we're going to talk about. I feel excited for this year because this seems to be alumni year. We have about 10 or more alumni who have applied. And I just feel really excited for therapists to join and people have been through the program because I'm just getting this feeling like we're going to go to a depth that we haven't gone to before. And so really excited to hear a lot of you are therapists. And excited to see who comes in. All right, I am going to share my screen and we'll do our PowerPoint. Anything else before we jump in, Micah?
All set. Let's roll.
Okay. All right. So there's a way that we simplify, our 20 some years of doing personal development work and healing work is that basically it all comes down to our state of being. And so we are either in this vital state where we are feeling in alignment, we're clear in our mind, it's kind of like when we drive to work, all the lights turn green, like we're in this state of feeling good and connected to ourself, our core, our intuition, I think is a really good way to explain vital state. Or we're in a survival state. And this is when we are feeling pressure, we're feeling stressed, we're feeling overwhelmed. And when we're in survival state, we're usually acting from an unconscious patterns. And so our whole life really has been dedicated to understanding what is it that keeps us stuck in survival states? Why is it so hard for us as humans to get out of these survival and actually live in a vital state? And it's what we've dedicated. It's just the question that we've always asked that has brought us here. And like I was saying, I got to that block in my own life. And before that, I was doing all of this top-down approach, which is really common in this industry. And the top-down approach versus a bottom-up approach is this thought around we're cognitively understanding concepts of therapy, concepts of what makes us who we are today. So this happened then, that's why I do this now. And it's really helpful because it's very organizing for our mind. It's organizing for our psyche. And when we become conscious, then we can shift, right? So I know that's why I did this, or it's why I behave this way, but now I can start to shift. I can start to understand it and make changes in my life. And what is so becoming known in the industry is that trauma impacts us in a different part of the brain. And so just understanding it, just knowing, becoming conscious of doesn't actually, well, it sometimes shifts, but it oftentimes doesn't get to the core of those wounds. It doesn't make us safe in our life and be able to heal. And so these bottom up or more somatic, we often use the word non-ordinary state type of practices, go into where we can access trauma. So it's these lower parts of the brain that are really where the body is holding the trauma. And that's what's keeping us in their survival states, is what's locked in this part of the body. So the bottom up approach is what we've become so enamored with because it's been so life-changing for us and our clients. As we were saying, I think the thing that really sets Vitalist apart is the way Micah and I have an obsession with learning and synthesizing information and taking what feels most effective and kind of throwing out the fluff. And so we'll talk about this a little bit later, but we combine a lot of different types of therapy into making up this methodology that we walk people through in Vitalist School.
Okay, so I'm going to start with this quote from Gabor Mate. People have two needs, attachment and authenticity. When authenticity threatens attachment, attachment trumps authenticity. So we grew up in a house, we're born into a house, and we realize really quickly, if I do this, mom gets mad. If I do this, dad gets happy. We can go to a school and we realize there are these rules. Right? There's this belonging that I need to find within community. But specifically around attachment, the things that our family could not hold, aspects of us that they could not tolerate, that they weren't okay with, we had to learn to completely disconnect from those. Learn to bury these parts of us, right? Our artistic part, our needs, right? Our preferences, depending on the home that we grew up in. And so, this really starts to frame this split that happens from our authentic self, from the vibrant, alive awakeness that we have when we're born, connected to the present moment, and then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, there's this way of behaving, and if I behave this way, I lose connection. And deep within our DNA, deep within our biology is, if I lose connection, then I'm not safe. I'm not going to make it in this tribe. So this is governing a lot of the work that we're doing here around developmental traumas. So the 5 personality patterns, this is one of the maps that we use. It's the Reiki and character structures. From some of you may have been trained in that. We're working with a book by Stephen Kessler, where he goes and really takes away a lot of the pathologizing language of the 5 personality patterns. And it basically starts with this, that, when we get startled, when we get overwhelmed, we employ one of these 5 safety strategies, which is really just about shifting our awareness or attention. And as we do that, it helps to relieve ourselves of that overwhelm. So we can see the first one, we leave our body, We go up to a spiritual realm or a thinking realm, figure it out in our head. Second one is we merge. I can't fix the problem. This is too overwhelming. So I'm going to have you fix it for me. Third one is we hunker down and endure. We just send all our energy down into our feet, into the earth, just hope that the storm passes. Fourth one is that we get aggressive. We throw our energy out into the world. We try to startle somebody else. We try to win the fight, get what we need. And the fifth one is we just become really rigid and we orient away from our core, from our sense of self, and we look towards the authorities and towards the rules. And so we start, with this program really recognizing that no matter how good your childhood was, no matter how wonderful your parents were, we've all adapted. We've all taken some of these patterns and adapted them, and they're now just stuck in our nervous system. They're stuck in our body. They become habitual ways of responding to overwhelm. And so, I won't go any deeper. I could talk for a long time about the five personality spectrum, but I'll stop there. I'll hold myself back and how excited I am about the Reichian character structures and but this is really one of the main maps that we use for understanding, and it's one of the books that we have for the reading. And generally, folks can just pick up this book and start reading and be pretty blown away. Just a beautifully written book. So, go to the next slide. So what this tells us, and this is a quote, right? Is you don't quote from Reich. You don't have to take a patient's history when they walk. It walks in the room with him, right? So part of what we're teaching in the school is we start to track and attune to our own body. What happens when I go into overwhelm? What happens when I get distressed? Do my shoulders go up? Does my jaw lock? Right? Do I get floaty in my body? We start to attune to our own patterns, our own ways that we avoid feeling the feelings. And so what this really leads to is an armoring. So armoring is a condition that results when the energy is bound by the muscular contraction, does not flow through the body. So normally we should have this vital life force flowing through our body, a big deep belly breath. But because of the trauma, the conditioning, these ways, we learn to restrict our body. And so these blockages become not just in our physical body, they become blockages in the way we think, the way we perceive the world. And all of a sudden we're not walking through the world really seeing what's happening in the present moment. We brought our 3-year-old self with us and our 16-year-old self with us. And we brought our dad's voice with us. And they're locked not only in our mind, but they're locked in our fascia, they're locked in our nervous system. So what happens is we realize, oh my gosh, we are not in charge of our own lives because we repeatedly do things we know will cause ourselves and other people pain. Right? All of us do this. We know this is not good for me. This is not good for my husband. It's not good for my wife. It's not good for my kids. And yet we repeat them. We make promises to ourselves and we break them. And we try to get our needs met by habitually using old strategies from our past, even when they aren't producing the results that we desire. Right? So we all know if it was just about doing better, if it was about knowing something in our mind and just stop doing that, that we would stop doing it. But we can't. It's more complicated than that. There are these parts, there are these pieces, there are ways that these parts hijack our nervous system and throw us into old survival strategies left over from our childhood that really are not serving. They're not working. Okay. So we like to start with the story of the loyal soldier. So this was a Japanese soldier who was stranded on an island. I believe it was about 35 years. And he thought he was in a war still. So he was hunkered down with weapons. Every once in a while, he'd go over to the other side of the island and take a cow from one of the locals. And he lived like this for over 35, I think it was about 35 years. And people came in and said, Hiro, will you come back? The war's over. And he didn't believe them. And this happened over and over again until there was a hippie hiker in the 70s that came through and he found him. And he said, what will it take for you to realize that there's no more war? The war's been over for decades. At this point, they had flown over with pamphlets that said the war's over. But every time that happened, he just thought it was a trick. And what he said is, I need a direct order from my commanding officer. Go to the next slide, please. And so his commanding officer, who was still alive, came out and he said to him, "You have done a good job. You have done a good job, and yet the war is over and you can come home. And it's safe to come home now." And so after 35 years living basically isolated on an island by himself, he came home. And the work that was the community's work was to welcome him home and thank him for his service. And what we realize when we get below these 5 personality patterns, these survival strategies, is that we have these parts. We have these parts of us that have been in charge of protecting us by being hyper vigilant all the time, protecting us by not speaking up and sharing our real feelings, protecting us by distracting ourselves or numbing ourselves, and that these parts, if left on their own devices, will just continue to do their job. So a big part of the program is to work at these levels, these really deep, vulnerable levels, and to connect with these parts, these loyal soldiers. And below the loyal soldiers, these little ones, the scared, angry, confused little ones that live underneath. And that this is the work. The work is to set these soldiers free, to thank them with gratitude, with empathy for all the hard work they've done to keep us safe, and to let them know from our adult self that we're safe now. We're going to be okay. We've got new strategies to deal with overwhelm. We've got new strategies to deal with difficult situations. Lasting change occurs when we dig deep enough to find the moments of disconnect and pain that have impacted and altered the way we live. As we learn to uproot and examine our unexpressed emotions and unmet needs, we begin to cultivate more compassion toward ourselves. By recognizing that many of our adaptive behaviors were formed during our younger developmental years as safety strategies, we start to find empathy for, rather than the pathology of, our inner wounds. As we confront outdated beliefs and begin to rewire and reprogram ourselves, transformation rises from the inside out.
So one of the things that we focus on, given everything like Micah was talking about around how much this developmental trauma impacts our body, how much armoring that we've created just being human in our life, how we have all of these ingrained protective parts and in our children, and is that we've integrated a bunch of different skill sets. So this is our sweet spot of using multiple modalities to work deeper, creating that lasting change. And it's really this combination of a top-down and bottom-up approach. So to just go through some of these modalities, we talked about the 5 patterns, and that's this understanding of trauma, but specializing in developmental trauma, because that's what all of us have. And often developmental trauma, what forms there, informs how other traumas impact us as well. And so with this foundation of developmental trauma, it's such a powerful way to get to the root of things. We use polyvagal theory in all of the ways we work. And I like to think about, when I found this work, the non-ordinary state work, which is the breath work, it's the somatic work, getting into the body, right? The non-ordinary state is really sometimes entering into a different state of consciousness, but it's very non-linear. And so it was like finally having this floodlight that we could go into the subconscious and heal. And so that's that somatic therapy. It's like, what's below that? We don't have to know specifically. We can follow the body, and the body knows the way. Or the breath work. When we do the breath work, it enacts this wisdom that the body has to heal. We bring intuition with touch. All of this is like working with a floodlight that can go so much deeper than I was ever able to go with these top-down approaches, and get to the core of these wounds. And then when we started to bring in the parts work and understanding how to specifically work with armoring, and how to specifically work with, those things like Micah was mentioning, how I can do this thing, it hurts my family, I don't want to do it. We can use these other modalities like a laser beam to go in and really specifically target those things that cause so much pain in our own life and in our relationships and families. So this combination is like using this giant floodlight and then going in with the laser beam. to really get and heal the parts of us that are not okay. So breath work, like I said, really can enact that unconscious part of the brain, get us sort of out of our mind and into our bodies. We believe a lot in touch because of how regulating it can be to the nervous system. So that's something we teach and bring into the school. Parts work is working with the loyal soldier, inner child work in a really dynamic way. And using the Joe is a lot around how Micah was showing you those 5 different patterns. We start to learn how to look at bodies and understand what's happening just by looking. So the Joe is one of the most amazing tools for assessment. And with the 5 patterns, what we start to learn is we can assess what patterns someone's running just by looking at their body structure. I mean, it's that amazing of how much the body holds and shows. So our hope is through going through the program, you have all of these tools to really target the work. Yeah.
Just to be clear, it's not a person named Joe. It's a 50-inch white oak staff. It's from Aikido. So it's a series of movements that we use that can become a self practice. It can become a practice with a partner or a group practice, but it has a lot to do with how do we stay in our power and how do we stay in reciprocating relationship.
Yeah. We also do a lot of movement practices too, and partner practices and connection attachment practices. So there's a lot we use in this program. We have 4 core principles that really are at the essence of what we're offering. So we're going to go through and talk about these 4 principles just so you kind of get a sense of where we're rooted. So the first one is awakening this vital life force. And at the Vitalist school, you'll learn to work fluidly between the mind, heart, and body to access your vital force. You'll call forth this innate healer within you that knows the path to transformation. You'll be guided to remember the wisdom of your ancestors, to utilize modern understanding of trauma, the nervous system, attachment theory, and all in service of honoring this vital life force. So in other words, we stay away from pathology and we move everything towards this belief that you have all the wisdom you need for your healing. And if we can connect people to their own vital life force and awaken their capacity to work with that, it's what will lead them to healing.
Embodiment. If information were the answer, we'd all be billionaires with perfect apps. If it was just about knowing something in our mind, well, you would all be able to do it. But embodiment happens when awareness moves from your mind and into your body, creating more space and vitality in your life as you uncover and live out your most authentic expression. All classes implement embodiment practices, including breathing, feeling, and rooting into the experience of being human. Now, another way to think about that, I have 2 daughters right now. One is almost 16, one who's 15. And for those of you who are parents, or you remember what it was like when you went through driver's training, um, as soon as these girls sat down and they went through the driver's training and read all the books and watched the movies and sat in class for 20 hours, I will let you know they had no idea how to drive a car still. And it is a harrowing act every time I get in the car with them because it's not embodied, right? It's not embodied. It is a concept that they are embodying. And so, what we want is to create practices, new pathways, so that everything we're learning becomes a new habit, a new way of seeing the world, a new way of showing up in our own life and our relationships. And so, we're not just going to sit up, despite the fact that we're starting with a PowerPoint in this particular class or this particular night, we're not using a bunch of PowerPoints. We're using these opportunities to understand the concepts, work them out in our body so that we can be the driver that's been driving for 20 years and not the 16-year-old driver who's it's not clicking yet. Okay, that's true learning, that's true knowledge, is when it's in our body, it's changed the way that we're showing up. Connection. Each year at the Vitalist School, participants come together to create a safe container and lean on each other for support. The inner journey can be isolating and lonely at times, and so it's confronting to have new friends to walk alongside as you travel. While this work can be demanding and intense, we aim to bring as much playfulness, dancing, laughter, and good food to the community to make the path as healing and nurturing as possible. So, we are social creatures. We are meant to be in tribes, and it's not the way the world's set up right now. And so, when the school started, one of the things that surprised me the most, and maybe it shouldn't have, but it was how deeply these groups connected to one another and became lifelong friends, and how much healing happened not during class time but afterwards in the sauna, at the hot tub, around the bonfire. You know, the next week when they got home and somebody needed support and they reached out, and so these cohorts just grow deep and they really become like family. And there's just an incredible amount of connection that happens in healing. We cannot, somebody said it earlier, we cannot heal in isolation. Right? We're wounded in community, we're wounded in family, we're wounded in connection, and we heal in the same way. So this is actually a picture of Leah's husband and my son who are in a cohort together a few years back.
And the last one is practitioner heal thyself. You're only able to guide and teach as deeply as you have traversed your own psyche. To be well equipped to lead others, you must continue to do your own transformational work. As you're liberated from what holds you back, in your presence gives others permission to go. And this is something that we believe so deeply and have such passion for, as we continue to deepen our own personal development work, and have always been so gracious for that, and understanding that it isn't as much about the specific skills as it is about each of us doing our own work so that we can see where we're leading people. And this program is intense in that way, because that is such a deep core belief for both Micah and myself, that that is what has to happen. And so we intend to hold each person to that. We intend to hold each person through their own deep, deep healing. And this container is set up to support you in going as deep as you need to go to move through this year.
All right, is there homework? Yeah, there is. It's mostly embodied homework. It's homework to be in your practice, to be with your breath, to be in your with your body. And it's about 30 to 40 minutes, 3 to 5 days a week. Practice partners, will have you connect with a person in the group, in the cohort. And so as we learn skills each weekend, you'll have an opportunity to connect with that person either in person or in Zoom, to practice. And for those wanting more practice, there's usually a bunch of other people in the cohort who would love to keep honing these skills.
Mhm. So is a personal track and a professional track. And the professional track was born out of witnessing people go through this program, and we're in the weekends. It's really an intensive for you. It's an intensive for you to dive in, be held, do your own deep work. And so the professional track is here to kind of walk alongside to make sure you're also integrating it into your practice, into bringing your practice forward into the world, taking steps to bring this work forward into the world, and that it's easy to integrate. In some ways, this work is so different and intense that it's like you have to forget everything you knew. And so this is so that you don't become too disoriented in all of that. So we have 3 key areas of focusing on. One is, like I was just speaking, how to integrate this methodology into what you're doing. Some people are stepping into becoming a practitioner of some sort for the very first time. Often people have a practice already. Sometimes people have had a practice for 20 years and now they're integrating this work. Doesn't matter where you are on the spectrum, the track is there to support wherever you are. There's a focus on actually evolving your practice. This is a little bit more business logistics. I've worked with entrepreneurs for most of my life. I love entrepreneurship, and I find that people who are entrepreneurs, like there's so much deep work in that. And it's just such a wild passion for me. So I love helping people bring this work forward. And then it's also about the spiritual side of stepping more fully into the role of a practitioner. And who do you have to become to hold this type of space for your clients? What are those parts in you that think that you maybe aren't good enough or don't have capacity? And it's really, really being able to work with all of those pieces that are going to come up as blocks to you bringing this work or whatever you're supposed to be doing forward in the world. So with the professional track, we have one live in-person day where it's like a workshop, and then we have 3 group coaching calls, and then you get 2 one-on-one sessions with me. Okay. So the investment for the entire program, the professional track is 6,895, and the personal track is 5,700. We kept the same price as last year. And what we have right now is another option. So you can do payment plans with that. We're really open to payment plans. If you're thinking about joining right now, we can spread those out from now until like the end of the session. So they can get down to really reasonable if you do need payment plans. If you don't need a payment plan and you can pay in full, we have this early bird pay in full special. So these prices are if you can pay in full, and we will accept those until May 31st.
Also, I think if you apply, what,
By
by tomorrow,
tomorrow.
then
Yeah.
you get another additional $100 off that too if you end up joining the program. So
Yeah. So we're with this kickoff call. If you're on here, you get $100 off that price. If you sign up, register your inquiry form by tomorrow.
I got a thought. Instead of
What?
reading these testimonials, let's see if there's anybody on the call
That
who
sounds good.
wants to give a testimonial about what they experienced in the school, and you know, that seems a little bit more alive than
I
continuing
like that
the
idea.
PowerPoint. So no pressure. We can read them if we need to, but anybody who was in the
Anyone
program, is
open?
in the program, wanted to share a little bit about, yeah, how it impacted you and why you're thinking of coming back.
You should do this every time we do an info call. Have some ex people on.
Yeah, I can speak. Um, so I really like, Leah, how you laid out the bottom up approach. Um, Kind of like inside out is what I was thinking when you were speaking to that. And for me, I know someone else in their introductory mentioned as well. I had done 17 years of psychotherapy in my lifetime, and which that constant search for something more is kind of what ended up leading me to Vitalist. And while I can definitely say that in those 17 years of psychotherapy that I, you know, progressed a great deal, I feel like the past year of my healing journey has catapulted me way far beyond those previous 17 years of psychotherapy. And so the bottom up, the inside out, the embodiment and the somatics of, being able to go in and learn how to process from inside instead of up in your head is really what has been the key for me. And I feel today I can honestly say I feel like I've gone farther than I anticipated I would.
Mm.
I feel better than I ever thought I would. And And yeah, I mean, I'm considering doing it again next year. So I think that speaks volumes as well.
Mhm. Mm.
Thanks, Jack. It's been beautiful to witness you continue to grow, evolve, and just smile a lot more.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack.
No pressure, but anyone else wanna chime in with another testimonial?
I'm happy to chime in. I don't know how it will work with this crazy child on my lap. Um, but yeah, I have found it to be so impactful. Like everyone has kind of talked about, the approach being so different from other types of therapy that I've experienced in the past. It just works. Like it works better than other stuff works, and it makes sense. So I really have appreciated the depth of understanding that has been passed along to us to help inform why it works. Like I'm a nerd for that sort of stuff, so I appreciate that piece of it, but to then actually experience it in my body and to be in a group of people who like that piece of it has been wild to me, that even though we all are different and we have so many different starting points and experiences in life that we bring, like there's been this really interesting sort of flow where I feel like a lot of the same experiences that I was having at different points through this year, that was being echoed in friends that I knew. So like I remember last month a group of us started talking about how we were starting to feel sort of isolated from some of our previous relationships and friendships because of, yeah, just feeling like we were focusing on something really big and it's hard to talk about it with other people. And so like having some collective grief around that, it was just wild to me. Like so many of us were experiencing that same sort of thing. So to feel really seen at each stage has been really special to me. And yeah, I think like it makes doing this work in this kind of setting where it's this big group like so much more potent than it would even be doing one-on-one sort of work with a practitioner, which I've also been doing, and that's been great as well. Like, it's all good stuff. But yeah, the cohort aspect of it, I think being in community has been one of the most beautiful parts to me.
Mhm.
And is partly why I'm like, I don't feel like I even really have a choice about whether or not to be involved in it next year, because I personally want to go into those deeper places, but I also can't imagine, um, I don't know, having like that sort of gap in the community that has been building. So
Mhm.
Thanks,
yeah.
Anka.
Yep.
Is that good? Do we need more? Anna or Kate or Marcy, if you got anything you want to share, you're more than welcome to. You also don't have to.
Mhm.
I can share a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I also did about 12 and a half years of psychotherapy in the past, and didn't get the results that I thought I would after spending all that money and time and tears. But since I've been doing this work, like I'm nervous talking right now, but I realized when I was working yesterday at my office, I realized in my life, how much better I feel since I've been doing this work. I really feel like a totally different person. I didn't know that I spent most of my life in fear. I was nervous at work all the time. I had a lot of energy, but it was all nervous energy.
Mhm.
And I'm so relaxed now, and I'm enjoying my life
Mhm.
so much. And it's wonderful. I have a lot of work to do yet, but I'm really happy with all the work I've done.
Thanks.
So thanks, you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really sweet. Thanks. Sweet to hear from all of you. Let's open it up to some questions. One thing that I didn't mention is that with the personal track, you get 3 sessions with two, we have 2 assistants next year, Casey and Ryan. They were the ones who assisted this past year. They're gonna both be assisting again. And so you get 3 sessions with one of them. And then like with the professional track, you get 2 additional with me. So with the professional track, you'd be getting 5 total sessions. And with the personal track, you'll get 3. So what questions come up for any of you?
I have a lot of questions, but almost lost it. But I'm thinking, I know that there's the I have like a more of a one-on-one meeting at some point after, like, if you do the inquiry, and I'm wondering if like that's like, if that's more of like your chance to interview us or our chance to ask those questions or interview you per se.
Both. Right now, if you have very personal questions, you can definitely save those for that. But yeah, in that interview, one of our purposes is to make sure you're ready, to make sure like you've done some work, you know what you're getting into, and to have you just have a chance to kind of personally bring where you're at so that we know a little bit of your background. We know what we're holding for you, and you're setting an intention with us and that. So, but yeah, feel free to ask anything because it will be relevant for all.
I don't know if my main question that I have, that again could be saved for the other time, is just like, I heard you say various times, like, you know, you've learned a lot of information and you come and you synthesize it and you bring in what you think is most important. But I guess I wonder how you approach the this how you approach knowing that like a lot of somatic work, a lot of breath work, uh, a lot of these practices have really complex lineages of appropriation, and like where that comes in or doesn't come in, and how you teach, how you practice, how um, you know, practice right relationship with the sources to which you have gained a lot of this knowledge, and then impart it to others in regards to like where and if there's like an element of, you know, honoring those lineages, practicing repair, practicing right relationship.
Ooh, that was a big conversation to start at 8 o'clock after a 1 hour call. So
Well, yeah, so I don't know if that's a better thing for a different conversation.
yeah, I really appreciate the question. It may be a little more than I want to tackle right now at the end of the information call. So let's hold it and we can bring that up. You know, I think the core of a lot of what we're teaching is through Wilhelm Reich, and it's his student Alexander Loden. in bioenergetics. And so it's got its roots in, well, essentially psychoanalysis, right? It's this character structure, this observation of the body. I would say that's the primary sort of kind of lineage that we're working with. And of course it gets, there's more than that in terms of when we get into the breath work and some of these things. But yeah, it's a probably a bigger conversation than we can have right now, because it's complex and it's diverse and there's lots of different ways to look at it and different sides. And so, but thank you for asking it. And you all can ask that question at your one-on-one interview, and we'll answer it then.
Well, I think it, and just to say it matters to us, and it's complex and it's ongoing, and we have a lot of our teachers are from indigenous cultures, and we have a lot of teachers from more Western cultures, and yeah, trying to be in right relationship with all of that matters so much. It's a constant thought and a constant thing we're working with.
Yeah, I think it's very much something that is on our hearts, on our minds, something we're intentionally working with. And we're all orphans. We're all orphans who are doing the best we can to either create culture within the land that we live on already, or we're borrowing it from other cultures, and that's been happening for a long time. And it's complicated to know how to do that in the best and highest way, in a good way. But it's something we're extremely conscious of. So yeah. Can we other questions? But I do want to share this, and I don't think we touched on it, which is a couple things. One is that we're moving locations this year from where we've held the school. And two is just to talk a little bit about lodging possibilities for people and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and Lacey, I want to circle back to what other questions you said. You had quite a few, so hear more from you. I will speak to the lodging. We are building a new facility here on the land that I live. So we're about 25 minutes north of Grand Rapids, and our facility has a big studio space and kitchen area and sleeping quarters. So what we found in the past few years of Vitalist school is that most people like to stay on the land and to really be submersed into the experience and to stay. So we don't include that in the price. That's an additional price if you want to stay and have a bed. Some people, you're welcome to camp on the land at no cost in the warmer months, but we do have sleeping pods that we'll be renting out. And so the sleeping pods, you'll get your own little bed that you crawl up into. It's your own private space. Those will be $100 for a weekend. And so that could be an extra cost for some people if you want to factor that in, if you think that you'll want to stay. You're welcome to just pay for those each month, make choices each month. Sometimes people want to stay a weekend, feel how that feels, go home a weekend, see how that feels. And I will tell you, most people end up just after a few weekends saying, I'm just gonna stay the whole weekend. It can be a real shift to go into your home environment and come back. And so that is a really big part of the experience, and children. Our lunches will be catered this year. So you'll have a beautiful lunch each day. We arrive 6 p.m. on Fridays. So you'll want to have eaten something before you arrive or have a snack for after Friday. Saturday, we have a full day. It goes from 9 till 6, sometimes 7. We'll have a lunch that day. Then Sunday, Saturday we go from 10 to 6, right? Sunday we go from 9 till 5. We have a lunch that day. For those people who are staying, oftentimes like it's about bringing your dinner for Saturday night, or bringing some food for breakfast and whatnot. So we like to leave that open so that you can kind of curate the experience that you want with the lodging and all of that. Okay. Lacey, some other questions.
I definitely want to let other people ask questions, but I have a question about just like if there's like I know you have payment plan options and things like that, but if there's like scholarship options or anything like that, or if it's just what's stated.
Yeah, at this exact moment in time, we don't have scholarship options. We are setting that up. That might be set up in the next month or so. And so we will make an announcement, like who qualifies for those and stuff if we get that together here in the next month or so. Payment plans are optional. We do $1,000 down payment to hold your space and then do payment plans from there. Other questions?
All right. I think the last thing that I'll just say is that for those of you who haven't done the program, this is an intense program. And especially if you have not done a lot of work in your body somatically or in non-ordinary states, it can bring a lot of stuff up. And there's a way in which the ego creates barriers and blocks to some of our deepest pain. And as we start to work with these modalities, these things come up to be felt. And this is all done through a trauma-informed lens. We're teaching the first weekend a lot around safety, around being able to find safety within yourself, to being your own inner authority. And yet, by the nature of this work, it is deep, it is profound, it is intense. And I would say in general is not for the faint of heart. And so it's just a good warning. We will be there all along, supporting, loving, encouraging, challenging, poking you, holding you, and it's intense. So that's that.
Mm-hmm.
Safe, yet intense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for joining us on this call. And for those of you who apply, you'll get sent a link to be able to set up a call with Leah and I, and then you can ask some other questions that are maybe more personal to you. And yeah, it's just a chance to make sure that it's a good fit both ways. So deep bow to all of you, and excited to see your faces some more. Anything you want to say, Leah?
No, thanks everybody.
Okay. Adios. Cheers, y'all.
Adios. Jack, I'm
Thanks,
so
guys.
excited to see you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Miss you, buddy.
Miss you.